Hello, good evening. How are you all doing? I hope you are having a very wonderful day. All right, there's something very quickly I'd like us to look at domestic violence, which is becoming increasingly predominant in our day and time. Despite the cries and the lamentations you have all over the place, there seems to be no possible sign of abatement to domestic violence. All right, every now and then you hear, reoccurring cases of domestic violence, all over the place, despite the cries and the lamentations you have all around. So it's important that we begin to look at, what could be some of the major causes. And of course, we already know that domestic violence is not peculiar, to the male figure. All right, nor is it peculiar to the female. All right, even though it applies to both sexes, there are men or guys who domestically abuse their partners, and there are ladies who also domestically abuse their partners. And of course, when we're talking about domestic violence or abuse, it's in three major areas. You have physical abuse, you have emotional abuse, and then you have mental abuse. All right, so it applies to these basic areas of abuse. Basically, it's not just physical. Okay, there are guys who goes about with wife battery. You beat up your wife, you beat up your girlfriend and what you have. And there are ladies that when they speak to you, they dehumanize you, they denigrate you. Their tongue is venomous, is poisonous. All right, they can talk the life out of you. All right, so and this results to, provokes the other partner, and it results to something else. All right, so what does the Bible says about domestic violence? The Bible says in Hosea 5 and verse 6, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And in Isaiah 5 and verse 13 said, my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge. So what God is telling us is that domestic violence, becomes possible where there is absence of knowledge. All right, if you like, what you want to call sense, even though common sense is not common in the first place. There are a lot of people today who are involved in relationship who lacks, some sanctified common sense to be able to call themselves to order, away from any form of violence whatsoever. All right, so now, when we're talking about domestic violence, what are some of the areas that it is supposed to apply, or that the knowledge we're talking about is supposed to apply? Because the Bible has told us that the reason for domestic violence clearly is as a result of absence of knowledge. That is clearly understood. Now, what are the three areas that this knowledge is supposed to apply? One is knowledge of self. Socrates woke up one morning and he said, "Oh man, know thyself." Referring to you, referring to me, we are supposed to have an accurate understanding of who the enterprise called man is. Now, it's important for you to understand that when God created man, he created man insufficient. What that means is he was created, to be a being of dependence, not independence. All right, he was supposed to be a being that will exist, that will subsist through the existence of another. He was not supposed to, live all by himself. And that's why when man rebelled against God in the Garden of Eden, God pronounced him dead because he declared independence. And the death there that God was talking about, was, the separation from God, because death is a process. It's in three stages. You have spiritual death, physical death, eternal death. Spiritual death is a separation from God. That's what spiritual death is. So when man rebelled against God, he died spiritually. He was disconnected from God. All right, so what am I trying to say? Man was created to subsist through the existence of another. He was supposed to live through his creator. All right. All right, the life of God was supposed to, permeate and find expression through him. So when he declared his dependence, he was standing alone. All right, so marriage is not something that you can prosecute without the help of God, because it's not an invention of Nollywood or Oxford University. It was established, invented by a spirit being called God, and you can only prosecute marriage by his help. Number two area where where knowledge is supposed to apply is knowledge of marriage itself. You find out that they say when purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. All right, there are a lot of us today who went into marriage without an accurate, detailed understanding of what marriage is, like the apostles did. If you study Matthew's Gospel chapter 19, where they came with questions to Jesus asking about divorce, you find out, I think in verse 10, the disciple says, if this is the case with marriage, it is better not to be married. That was because they understood what it was. There are a lot of us today who go into marriage without really understanding what it is. And this, we possess warped and lopsided concept about it that we inherited from our parents. Those our parents inherited it from their parents. We pass it to our children. Those children pass it to their children. You know, it goes on and on and on and on. And you find out that we keep having increasing cases of violence, of, you know, all manner of abuse all over the place. Now, the third area where it is supposed to apply is knowledge of love. Knowledge of love. Now, the Bible tells us in Romans chapter 13 and verse 8, it says, owe no man nothing but to love one another, for he that loveth another has fulfilled the law. In verse 9, he said, for this thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly summed up in this: thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. And in verse 10, he said, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. What is the Bible simply saying? That when you love a person as you love yourself, do you beat yourself? Do you abuse yourself emotionally? Do you abuse yourself physically? Do you abuse yourself mentally? All right. So what the Bible is saying is that you're supposed to treat your neighbor, your wife, your spouse, as much as you treat yourself with love. So when you find a person beat their spouse, it's a sign that they don't love them. There are a lot of people who are in marriage today. There are a lot of people who are intending couples who think they love themselves, but they really don't. That's why you discover people get married after like 2-3 months, a year, 3-4 years, they separate. All right, this is where people were supposed to be in love. So what am I trying to say? It's time for us to go back to the drawing table and apply ourselves to reason, to knowledge of the truth, you know, so that the hand of God can be strong upon our lives, so that we can have something substantial and lasting to hand over to the preceding generation. My name is Mike Davis. I want to thank you for stopping by to look at this broadcast. You probably want to share, you want to like, you want to subscribe to my YouTube, to all my social media platform. Mike Davis Online is my social media handles. Thank you so very much. I do have a most productive evening and remain in an atmosphere of knowledge, 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 knowledge.